The stars stretched endlessly across the sky of the distant planet Lycera 7. Its twin suns cast a soft golden glow over the jagged mountains and deep canyons below. High above, a silver spaceship drifted silently, its engines humming quietly. Inside, a young human named Daniel checked his instruments again, as if trusting the screens more than his own eyes. Daniel was small by alien standards. Lycera 7 was home to the Sarathi, a proud and tall species, towering nearly twice as high as a human. Their skin shimmered faintly in the light and their eyes glowed with an inner fire. They had ruled the nearby systems for centuries, believing no creature could ever match their skill or strength. Humans were spoken of with disbelief, fragile, weak, and incapable of surviving the harshest conditions of space. Yet Daniel had been sent here, alone, on a mission no Sarathi had ever dared attempt. He was a mechanic and engineer, part of a small human research team exploring uncharted sectors. Their mission was simple on paper: repair an abandoned Sarathi outpost damaged during a long-forgotten war. But simple papers never accounted for alien suspicion, dangerous terrain, or their own arrogance. As Daniel approached the outpost, he noticed movement. A figure stepped from the shadows of a jagged cliff. She was tall, even by Sarathi standards, with violet skin that shimmered in the sunlight. Her name was Lyra, and she was the daughter of one of the most influential Sarathi commanders. Her eyes narrowed as she studied him, clearly skeptical. "You're a human," she said, her voice low and sharp. "You don't belong here." Daniel raised his hands in peace. "I come in peace. I'm just here to repair the outpost." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, almost mocking smile. "Repair it? Do you even know how to survive here? The storms can crush a Sarathi in minutes, let alone a human." Daniel swallowed. He knew the Sarathi pride would make his task even harder, but he refused to show fear. "I know more than you think. I've survived worse than this." Lyra tilted her head, her glowing eyes studying him. "Then prove it," she said simply, and turned to leave. Daniel watched her stride across the rocky terrain, each step measured and precise. She was clearly challenging him, testing whether humans were as weak as her people believed. And Daniel knew he had to prove more than survival. He had to show ingenuity, courage, and strength that no Sarathi could underestimate. The entrance to the outpost was blocked by a collapsed metal archway, rusted and twisted by years of neglect. Daniel set down his toolkit and examined the debris. The Sarathi had built their structures with a combination of advanced alloys and energy shielding. Repairing it required both technical knowledge and physical skill. As he worked, Lyra lingered nearby, leaning against a jagged rock. Her expression was a mix of curiosity and amusement. "Do you really think you can fix that?" she asked. Daniel didn't look up. "I don't think." "I know." Hours passed as Daniel examined the machinery, rewiring circuits and reinforcing weak points. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted with streaks of pink and purple. A cold wind swept through the canyon, and even the Sarathi with their strong frames shivered. Lyra watched as Daniel struggled with a heavy panel that had fallen from the ceiling. Normally, a Sarathi would lift it with ease, but Daniel didn't have their size. He paused, wiped sweat from his brow, and then carefully rigged a pulley system using scraps of metal and rope from his toolkit. With careful calculation and patience, he moved the panel into place without straining his body. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected such cleverness. "Not bad. For a human," she muttered. Daniel gave a small smile. "Brains often beat brawn," he said quietly. Night fell completely and the twin moons rose in the sky, casting a pale glow over the outpost. Daniel finally finished the repairs to the main console. He activated the systems and lights flickered across the walls. Energy shields hummed softly and a series of warning alarms turned off. The outpost was alive again. Lyra stepped closer, her usual pride softened by genuine interest. "You actually did it. You survived and you repaired it. Incredible." Daniel shrugged. "It's what humans do. We adapt. We survive." Lyra studied him for a long moment. Her people rarely admitted that a human could match their skill. But now, standing before one, seeing the calm determination in his eyes, she had to reconsider. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Dust and small rocks rained down from the cliffs. Daniel grabbed a nearby support beam, steadying himself. Lyra's eyes widened in alarm. "An aftershock, or something else?" Before Daniel could answer, A low, rumbling growl echoed from the canyon below. Shadows shifted and massive shapes emerged. Predatory creatures native to Lysera 7, long thought extinct, had returned. Their eyes glowed with hunger, and their teeth gleamed in the moonlight. Lyra stepped back, her usual confidence shaken. They shouldn't be here. Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed a nearby energy blaster, checking its charge. He knew he couldn't fight them all, but he could create a distraction and lead them away from the outpost. "Follow my lead," he said. The creatures lunged, moving faster than either of them expected. Daniel fired a few calculated shots, aiming to scare rather than kill. One of the beasts hesitated, then another. He shouted to Lyra, "Now! Move with me." Lyra hesitated, then followed. Daniel led the creatures into a narrow canyon, using his knowledge of terrain to stay ahead. He set small energy charges along the path. When the creatures followed, the charges went off, startling them and forcing them to scatter. By the time the danger passed, Daniel and Lyra were breathless, but safe. Lyra turned to him, her eyes wide with a mix of respect and awe. You didn't just survive. You used your mind, not just your strength. That's human." Daniel smiled, brushing dust from his jacket. "Strength comes in many forms. You just need to know how to use it." For the first time, Lyra's pride didn't hide her curiosity. She studied him, and in her heart she realized something that few Sarathi had ever admitted. Humans were not weak. Not in body, not in mind, and certainly not in courage. As they returned to the outpost, a fragile alliance began to form between them. Daniel knew that Lyra would tell her people what she had seen, and he also knew that this was only the beginning. The humans might be small, but they carried something no one could underestimate: the power to adapt, to survive, and to surprise the galaxy. The twin moons hung high in the sky, illuminating the repaired outpost. Somewhere deep in the mountains, other creatures stirred, curious about the strange humans who dared to walk Lysera 7. Daniel and Lyra stood together, watching the horizon. Neither spoke, but both understood. This encounter would change everything. And somewhere in the distance, a faint hum of unknown technology began to activate. A warning signal, or perhaps an invitation. Daniel tightened his grip on his tools, ready for whatever came next. Lyra watched him carefully, realizing that the human before her was more than a survivor. He was a challenge to everything she had ever believed about her species, and hers alone. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps humans had a place among the stars, not as fragile creatures to be dismissed, but as equals, maybe even as heroes. The night was silent, but the promise of adventure had only just begun. The repaired outpost hummed with quiet energy as Daniel and Lyra stood together, surveying the canyon below. The night was calm, but both of them knew calm rarely lasted on Lysera 7. Even the smallest sound could bring predators or rival Sarathi patrols to their doorstep. Lyra's violet eyes reflected the soft glow of the outpost lights. She had been quiet since the encounter with the creatures, clearly thinking. "Humans, and you're different," she said finally. "You don't just survive, you think. You use your mind." "That's unusual," Daniel smiled, leaning against a support beam. "We have to. We can't rely on strength alone. It's not always enough." Lyra studied him for a moment, then asked, "Then why are you here? Your species is weak, or so most of my people believe. What makes you think you can survive here?" Daniel shook his head. "Most of your people believe wrong. Humans survive because we adapt, because we don't give up, even when everything is against us. That's why I'm here. That's why we always try." Lyra didn't respond immediately. She turned and scanned the horizon. "There's more danger tonight. The creatures you drove off will return, and other predators might come too. You should rest." Daniel shook his head. "I can't, not yet. I need to finish scanning the systems and check the outpost's communications. Someone might still be sending distress signals. If they are, we need to know." Lyra sighed, a mix of frustration and admiration in her tone. "You work too much. Even I would need rest after what just happened." Daniel laughed softly. "Humans don't work less. We work smarter, and sometimes longer." He moved to the main console and began running diagnostics. The outpost was old, built during the time of Sarathi expansion, and had been abandoned for decades. Dust, rust, and decay had left many systems damaged beyond repair. Yet Daniel had already managed to restore most of the core functions. Lyra watched as he worked, fascinated. "You really understand this technology?" It's ancient and dangerous. Even my engineers couldn't fix it. Daniel's fingers moved over the panels, typing commands, rerouting power, and activating systems one by one. It's not about age. It's about understanding patterns. Everything has a logic. You just need to know how to read it. The lights flickered briefly, then stabilized. A soft hum filled the room as the outpost systems powered fully online. Daniel leaned back and smiled. There. All core systems are operational. Life support, communications, energy shields, everything. Lyra's eyes widened. You did all this alone? No Sarathi could have done it this fast. Daniel shrugged. I told you. Humans adapt. We find a way. Suddenly, a loud beep echoed through the outpost. A small screen lit up, displaying a faint signal. Daniel leaned forward. Someone is sending a distress signal. It's weak, but it's definitely coming from the northern ridge. They might be trapped or in danger. Lyra's expression hardened. The northern ridge? That's dangerous territory. Even Sarathi patrols avoid it. Why would anyone be there? Daniel's eyes narrowed. Doesn't matter. They need help. We can't ignore it, Lyra hesitated. You know this could be a trap, don't you? It could be a lure, my people. We've heard of humans being easily deceived. Daniel stood straight, determination in his posture. And then we'll be careful. But we will go. No human leaves another in danger if we can help. Lyra studied him silently for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. Fine, we go. But you follow my lead. One wrong move and we won't survive the night. Together they prepared for the journey. Daniel gathered tools, weapons, and supplies while Lyra checked her own equipment. The two of them moved cautiously out of the outpost, stepping onto the rocky terrain under the light of the twin moons. The northern ridge loomed ahead, jagged and shadowed. Daniel's eyes scanned the ground, noting every crack, every loose rock. Even a human could slip and fall if they weren't careful. Lyra moved ahead, graceful and confident, but Daniel noticed that even she moved with caution now. Hours passed as they climbed. The terrain was rough and the wind cut through their clothing like icy knives. Daniel's stamina surprised Lyra. Despite being smaller, he moved steadily, never stopping, never complaining. Each time a loose rock slid underfoot, he adjusted, finding a new foothold and pressing onward. Finally, they reached a narrow ledge overlooking a cave entrance. Faint lights flickered inside and muffled voices could be heard. Daniel crouched behind a rock, observing. There, someone's alive. But there's more than one. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Patrols. Or predators. I can't tell which from here. Be ready for anything. Daniel checked his blaster. Always am. They approached the cave carefully, using shadows as cover. As they got closer, they saw 3 figures trapped inside, surrounded by a group of large, 4-legged predators. The creatures snarled, circling, their teeth glinting in the faint light. Without hesitation, Daniel stepped forward. He activated a small energy flare, blinding the creatures temporarily. Lyra lunged alongside him, using her agility to push 2 predators back. The trapped figures scrambled to safety. Daniel's strategy was simple but effective. He used small bursts of energy from his blaster to scare the predators, combined with Lyra's speed and precision. Together they created an opening, leading the trapped group out of the cave and toward safer ground. Once the creatures retreated into the darkness, Daniel and Lyra helped the survivors to the ridge. They were a group of human explorers, badly shaken but unharmed. Lyra looked at Daniel with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. I didn't think humans could do that. But you just did. You saved them. Daniel smiled, brushing dust from his clothes. I told you. Humans survive. We find a way, even when the odds are against us. One of the rescued explorers looked at him in awe. You came alone? Against all that? Daniel nodded. Not alone. I had help when it mattered. He looked at Lyra. We work together. That's how humans survive and thrive. Lyra's pride softened further. She had always believed strength was measured by size and power, not by strategy and courage. Daniel had shown her otherwise. For the first time, she wondered if humans might be more than what her people had always assumed. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Daniel, Lyra, and the rescued explorers made their way back to the outpost. The journey had been dangerous, but they had survived, and more importantly, they had proven something. Lyra's voice broke the silence. You really are different. Strong, clever, brave. I think I misjudged your species. Daniel laughed softly. It happens a lot. But don't worry. Humans don't give up. We keep surprising people, Lyra smiled faintly. I think my people will have a lot to learn about humans, especially after tonight, Daniel shrugged. Let them. We're not here to prove ourselves. We're here to survive, to explore, to help where we can. Strength comes in many forms. You'll see more of it soon. As the outpost came into view, its lights shining like beacons, Daniel felt a quiet satisfaction. He had survived the night, rescued the explorers, and earned the reluctant respect of a Scifi warrior. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Lyra walking beside him seemed lost in thought. Perhaps she was beginning to see that humans were not just survivors. They were capable of inspiring hope and courage even in the face of fearsome odds. And somewhere, beyond the distant mountains, other forces stirred. Forces that would soon test Daniel, Lyra, and the humans in ways none of them could yet imagine. But for now, they had won a small victory, one that would echo across Lysera 7 and perhaps one day across the stars. For Daniel, the stars above were no longer distant mysteries. They were challenges, opportunities, and adventures waiting to be faced. And he would face them all not as a weak human, but as one who had already proven his strength when it mattered most. The first rays of the twin suns touched the outpost, casting light on a human standing tall beside an alien warrior. Two species separated by pride and history had found common ground in courage, ingenuity, and the will to survive. And the universe had taken notice. The morning sun bathed Lysera 7 in soft golden light. The twin suns reflected off the outpost's metallic walls, giving it a warm glow that seemed almost alive. Daniel checked the repaired systems once more, making sure everything was running smoothly. The survivors from the northern ridge were resting, but Daniel knew peace on Lysera 7 was fragile. Danger always returned faster than expected. Lyra stood nearby, watching the horizon with a thoughtful expression. Humans, you're not like any creature I've met, she said softly. You survive against odds no Scifi would dare face. You think, plan, and act all at once, Daniel smiled. It's what we do. We can't rely on luck alone. If we do, we die. Lyra nodded slowly. She had always believed strength came from size, speed, or raw power. But Daniel had shown her otherwise. One small human using his mind and courage had faced predators, rescued trapped explorers, and repaired ancient technology. It was impossible to ignore. Before Daniel could respond, a sudden alarm echoed through the outpost. Red lights flashed across the walls and a low, warning hum filled the air. Daniel rushed to the console. Energy readings. Something is approaching. And it's large. Very large, Lyra's eyes widened. Could it be another predator? Daniel shook his head. No, this isn't natural. It's mechanical. And moving fast. Through the viewport, they could see a massive shadow in the distance moving over the mountains. Its shape was unlike anything Daniel had seen before. Sleek, metallic, and enormous, it glided across the terrain with frightening precision. The survivors stirred, fear written on their faces. Lyra moved beside Daniel, placing a hand on his shoulder. That's a ship, a warship maybe. Why would it come here? Daniel studied the readings. The energy signature was powerful but inconsistent. It's not here to attack yet. It's scanning, looking for something. Maybe us, maybe something else. Either way, we need to prepare. Lyra nodded. We should evacuate the survivors to the northern plateau. It's higher ground, easier to defend. Daniel quickly organized the group. The survivors gathered supplies and followed, while Daniel and Lyra stayed behind to monitor the approaching ship. The mechanical giant moved closer, its sensors sweeping the valley, searching for any signs of life. As they climbed the rocky path to the plateau, Daniel's mind raced. The ship's technology was advanced far beyond what humans had encountered before, but he knew something. Intelligence, creativity, and quick thinking could always level the playing field. Humans were small, yes, but they were unpredictable. That unpredictability could be a weapon. Reaching the plateau, Daniel and Lyra took positions near large boulders that could provide cover. The survivors huddled together, frightened but trusting Daniel. Stay close, he said firmly. Follow instructions and no one gets hurt. The shadow of the warship darkened the plateau. Its enormous engines hummed, vibrating the ground beneath their feet. Daniel activated the outpost's sensors to get a closer reading. It's scanning for energy sources. If it detects the outpost fully powered, it could attack. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Then we need to hide the power signature. Can you do that? Daniel nodded. I can try, but it will take focus. I need cover. He sprinted back to the outpost, Lyra following closely. Using his tools and a combination of human ingenuity and raw speed, Daniel rerouted energy flows, muffled emissions, and activated decoy signals. The warship hovered above the valley, scanning, but its sensors were now confused. Lyra watched him work, amazed at how quickly he adapted. No one in my world could do this under pressure. You're incredible. Daniel glanced at her briefly. We're not done yet. The ship might still find us. We need a plan. The warship descended slowly, probing the mountains with energy beams. Daniel had one idea: draw it away from the survivors. He could use the terrain to his advantage. We'll lure it into the canyon, he said. It won't maneuver well there. And we can use the outpost's defenses. Lyra's violet eyes widened. It's risky, but as it might work, I'll go with you. Together, they led the survivors to a safer area while preparing the canyon as a trap. Daniel set energy pulses along narrow passages, using the outpost's remaining power to create blinding flashes and noise to confuse the ship's sensors. Lyra guided the survivors, keeping them calm and organized. As the warship entered the canyon, Daniel triggered the first set of pulses. Lights flashed, echoes bounced off the canyon walls, and the ship's sensors struggled to maintain focus. It fired a few energy blasts, but the narrow walls blocked most of them. Lyra's voice rang out. Now, Daniel, lead it deeper. He sprinted ahead, using small jumps and handholds to move swiftly. The warship followed, its massive engines barely maneuvering in the tight canyon. Daniel activated more pulses, forcing the ship to adjust repeatedly. Each time it tried to fire, the canyon walls reflected energy beams harmlessly into the sky. Finally, they reached a section where the canyon walls formed a tight funnel. Daniel activated the final pulse. The warship's sensors overloaded and it slammed into the rocky walls, sending sparks and debris flying. Lyra and Daniel barely dodged falling rocks, but they managed to stay safe. When the dust settled, the warship was immobilized. Its engines sputtered and its lights flickered weakly. Daniel breathed heavily, wiping sweat from his brow. That should buy us time. It won't be attacking for a while. Lyra stepped closer, her expression one of awe and disbelief. You did this. You took on a warship alone, with some clever thinking and planning. Incredible. Daniel smiled faintly. Humans survive. We don't always win by strength, but by thinking ahead, adapting and staying calm under pressure. The survivors approached, their eyes wide. How did you do that? One asked. Daniel shrugged. We found a way. That's what humans do. Lyra studied him quietly. She had been taught that only the strongest or largest could defeat such threats. But Daniel had proven her wrong, not with brute force, but with intelligence, courage, and unshakable resolve. As the group returned to the outpost, the sun rose fully, illuminating the canyon and the disabled warship. Daniel and Lyra walked side by side, their bond growing stronger with each challenge. Your people, Lyra began, hesitant. They think humans are fragile, weak, but I see now. Strength comes in many forms. You have strength, courage, and determination. Even your size doesn't matter when your mind is sharp and your heart is brave. Daniel nodded. We've always had to survive in difficult conditions. We've learned to adapt, to use our brains, and to stay calm. That's our strength. Size is secondary. Lyra smiled faintly, a rare expression of respect and admiration. I will tell my people what I've seen. They may finally understand that humans are not what we believed. Daniel glanced toward the horizon. The disabled warship was a warning, yes, but also a reminder. The galaxy was full of challenges, and humans would face them all using courage, intelligence, and adaptability. Let's hope, Daniel said, that the next challenge is one we can handle just as well. Lyra's eyes sparkled. With you leading, I believe we can face anything. As they returned to the safety of the outpost, the twin suns reflected off the walls, signaling a new day. The human and the Sarathi warrior stood side by side, their bond of respect and trust growing. The universe beyond Lysera 7 was vast and dangerous, but together, they had proven that even the smallest and seemingly weakest could overcome the impossible. For Daniel, the stars were no longer distant and unreachable. They were challenges, adventures, and opportunities waiting to be faced. and he would face them all not as a fragile human, but as one who had already proven his strength when it mattered most. The canyon behind them lay quiet, the disabled warship a testament to human ingenuity and courage. Lyra, standing beside Daniel, realized that her beliefs, her pride, and even her understanding of strength had been forever changed. Humans were not weak. Humans were survivors, and the galaxy she knew would soon learn the same. The morning air on Lysera 7 was sharp and cold. The survivors had recovered some of their courage, but the memory of the warship and the night's dangers still lingered. Daniel and Lyra stood atop the outpost, scanning the horizon. The twin suns reflected off the mountains, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape. Lyra's violet eyes were focused, alert. The disabled ship is far from the only threat. Others could come, drawn by its energy signature. We can't stay here for long, Daniel nodded. Agreed, we need to find a safer location, somewhere we can defend easily and monitor the surrounding areas. Lyra considered the terrain carefully. There's an abandoned fortress on the northern plateau. High walls, narrow passages, and reinforced gates. It was used centuries ago during the wars. We could use it as a stronghold. Daniel studied a map on the outpost console. It's risky. The fortress is far, and the path is filled with unstable terrain, but if we move carefully, we could make it, and once there, we'd have a defensible position. Lyra's eyes sparkled with determination. Then we move. The survivors need safety, and we can't let our guard down. They began the trek north, the group moving cautiously across jagged rocks and steep cliffs. Daniel led, constantly assessing the terrain, checking for loose rocks, hidden dangers, or predator tracks. Lyra moved beside him, keeping the humans coordinated and calm. The survivors followed, placing trust in their guidance. Hours passed, and the fortress finally appeared on the horizon. Its high walls were cracked and weathered, but the structure remained imposing. Ancient towers rose above the landscape, their shadows stretching over the plateau like watchful sentinels. As they approached, Daniel noticed something unusual. The fortress. There's a recent energy signature. Someone or something has been here. Lyra narrowed her eyes. Could be scavengers or other explorers. We need to be careful. Daniel activated a small sensor device, scanning the area. The results confirmed his suspicion. A small group had been here recently. They weren't hostile, at least not yet, but their presence complicated things. Stay alert, Daniel warned the group. We don't know who they are or what they want. The group entered the fortress cautiously. Dust hung in the air and the faint hum of old machinery echoed through the halls. Daniel checked each room as they moved, reactivating the old systems and lighting up the interior with portable lamps. Lyra led the survivors to a large central chamber, a place where they could rest and regroup. This will be our base for now, she said. We'll set up defenses and keep watch. Nothing gets in without our knowledge. Daniel nodded, already thinking ahead. We should reinforce the entrances and set traps along likely paths. If anyone or anything approaches, we'll know. As the survivors settled in, Daniel climbed to the highest tower of the fortress. From there, he could see far across the plateau. The warship from before was gone, but new shapes moved in the distance. Smaller scout ships glinting in the sun, scanning the landscape. Lyra joined him, her expression tense. They've brought scouts. More of their kind are coming. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Then we prepare. Humans don't wait for threats to arrive. We meet them head on. Over the next several hours, Daniel and Lyra worked tirelessly. Daniel rigged energy traps using the fortress's old systems, creating decoys and signals to mislead any approaching enemies. Lyra organized patrols along the walls, teaching the survivors how to move quietly, how to react, and how to stay safe. The first signs of the approaching threat came at dusk. Small scout ships appeared on the horizon, moving steadily toward the fortress. Daniel monitored them from the tower. They're cautious. They've learned from the last encounter, but they'll make a mistake soon enough. Lyra stood beside him. We have the high ground, and you've prepared the fortress well. We can handle them if they try anything foolish. Daniel smiled faintly. That's the advantage humans always have. We think ahead, we adapt. We survive. The scouts drew closer, their engines humming softly. From the fortress, Daniel triggered a series of decoy signals, confusing their sensors. The ships faltered, unsure of the true location of the outpost. Lyra seized the opportunity. Now set the traps. Energy nets shot out from concealed points along the fortress walls, capturing the first few scouts. Others fired weapons blindly, but the narrow fortress passages prevented them from hitting anything critical. Daniel moved along the walls, adjusting the traps and directing the energy pulses to keep the scouts off balance. The battle was intense but brief. The scouts, unable to penetrate the fortress defenses, began retreating. Lyra and Daniel watched as they fled toward the horizon, their retreat a testament to human ingenuity and preparedness. Inside the fortress, the survivors cheered softly. They had witnessed courage, skill, and strategy on display. Daniel looked at Lyra. Humans don't always win with brute force. Sometimes it's planning, coordination, and courage that make the difference. Lyra nodded, a rare smile crossing her face. I see that now. I will never underestimate humans again. The night settled over the fortress. Daniel and Lyra stood on the highest tower, looking out across the plateau. The twin moons cast their light over the rocky landscape, and the survivors rested safely below. Daniel spoke quietly. This was only a test. The galaxy will throw more challenges our way, and each time we'll face them together. Lyra's violet eyes reflected both respect and admiration. I've seen humans survive what no Sarathi could, and I've seen you lead, think, and act under pressure. There's more to your species than anyone in my world imagined. Daniel smiled. We adapt, we survive, and sometimes we surprise everyone, including ourselves. As the night deepened, distant echoes reached them, the faint hum of unknown engines, signaling that the galaxy's dangers were far from over. Daniel and Lyra exchanged a knowing look. They had proven their strength today, but tomorrow could bring even greater threats. Lyra's voice broke the silence. Whatever comes next, I'll follow you. You've shown me that humans are not weak, not in body, not in mind, and certainly not in courage. Daniel nodded. And I'll need your strength too. Humans can survive, but we are stronger when we have allies, especially ones as capable as you. The fortress stood firm against the night. The humans had proven their courage and ingenuity once again, but the galaxy remained vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges. Daniel and Lyra knew that the next trials would be even greater, but together they were ready. For the survivors, the fortress became a symbol of hope. For Daniel, it was a testament to human resilience. And for Lyra, it was a revelation. Humans were not weak. They were strong, clever, and capable of facing impossible odds. As dawn approached, the first rays of the twin suns lit the fortress walls, casting long shadows across the plateau. Daniel and Lyra stood side by side, ready to face whatever the galaxy would send their way next. And somewhere beyond the horizon, distant signals and unknown forces stirred. The universe had taken notice of the humans and their allies. It would test them again. But Daniel, Lyra, and the survivors were ready. For humans had a secret advantage: the ability to adapt, survive, and overcome any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. The stars above promised danger, adventure, and discovery. And Daniel, standing tall beside his new ally, welcomed every challenge. The fortress stood firm, a bastion of human courage and ingenuity on an alien world. And Lyra, once a skeptic, now understood the truth. Humans were not fragile, not weak, and not to be underestimated. They were survivors, and their strength would echo across the stars. The twin suns of Lysera 7 rose high in the sky, bathing the fortress in golden light. The night had passed quietly, but Daniel knew the calm would not last. The disabled warship had been a warning, and the retreating scouts a reminder. Greater dangers would come. He stood atop the fortress wall, surveying the plateau, his mind already planning the next move. Lyra joined him, her violet eyes scanning the horizon. "Do you think they'll return?" she asked quietly. Daniel shook his head slowly. "It doesn't matter. They might, but we're ready. Humans don't wait for danger to come. We face it head on." Lyra studied him, a smile of respect crossing her face. "I've seen that now. You've proven yourself again and again. Humans are stronger than anyone imagined. Stronger in ways my people cannot even understand." Daniel glanced at her, appreciating her sincerity. Strength isn't always about size or power. It's about courage, adaptability, and determination. That's what keeps us alive. The survivors began preparing the fortress for a potential attack. Daniel and Lyra led them in reinforcing the walls, setting energy traps, and mapping escape routes. Each human and Scifi working together formed a small, efficient team, united by necessity and mutual respect. Hours passed. Daniel had just finished rerouting a defensive energy shield when Lyra's voice called from the tower. "Look." On the horizon, a fleet of sleek warships appeared, moving with precision and intent. Their engines glinted in the sunlight, and energy signatures confirmed they were more advanced than the scouts. This was no small threat, it was a full-scale assault. Daniel took a deep breath. "This is it. The real test." Lyra's hand rested on his shoulder. "Then we face it. Together." The fleet approached rapidly, scanning the fortress with powerful sensors. Daniel quickly analyzed their formation. "They've learned from the scouts. They'll try to overwhelm us with numbers and firepower, but the fortress is defensible, and we have something they don't expect: human ingenuity." Lyra nodded. "Then let's show them why humans survive where others fail." Daniel moved swiftly, activating traps and energy decoys across the plateau. Lyra coordinated the survivors, ensuring everyone knew their position and tasks. The fortress walls hummed with power, energy barriers glowing faintly as they prepared for the incoming attack. The first ships reached the fortress perimeter, firing energy blasts that struck the walls with thunderous impact. Daniel ducked behind a boulder, quickly recalibrating a defensive pulse. The blast reflected off the energy shield, confusing the enemy sensors. Several ships fired blindly, hitting only empty terrain. Lyra led a group of survivors to reinforce a weak point on the eastern wall. "Move fast," she commanded. "Keep the barriers active and don't let them breach us." Daniel climbed the highest tower, using the vantage point to direct defensive operations. He adjusted energy pulses, creating a rhythm that misled the enemy fleet. The ships fired repeatedly, but their attacks were no longer precise. Every move Daniel made forced them to adapt, and the human unpredictability gave them the advantage. A sudden alarm rang through the fortress. "They're deploying boarding drones," one of the survivors shouted. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Then we deal with them the same way, thinking faster than they can." Using the fortress's narrow passageways, Daniel and Lyra set ambush points. The drones, sleek and fast, attempted to infiltrate, but were met with energy traps, disorienting pulses, and calculated counterattacks. Each drone was neutralized before it could cause serious harm. The human survivors watched in awe. They had never seen such coordination, such strategic thinking under pressure. Even the Scifi, known for their pride, were impressed. Lyra's respect for Daniel grew with each maneuver. Daniel paused for a moment, surveying the battlefield. "We've slowed them down, but the fleet will regroup. We need a decisive move." Lyra's eyes glimmered. "I have an idea. If we can lure their flagship into the canyon where you first trapped the warship, we can disable it and force the rest to retreat." Daniel considered it. It was risky, but he knew it could work. "Then let's do it. But we'll need to coordinate perfectly." Together, they devised a plan. Using decoy energy signals and rapid maneuvers, Daniel drew the flagship toward the canyon while Lyra directed the survivors to cover key points. The enemy ships took the bait, following what they believed was the fortress's true location. As the flagship entered the canyon, Daniel activated a series of carefully timed energy pulses. The canyon walls reflected the pulses, creating blinding flashes and loud reverberations. The flagship struggled to maneuver in the narrow passage, its massive size working against it. Lyra and Daniel used portable energy disruptors to overload the ship's systems. Sparks flew, engines sputtered, and the massive vessel ground to a halt wedged between the canyon walls. The rest of the fleet, seeing their leader disabled, hesitated and then began to retreat. The survivors cheered, relief washing over them. The fortress remained intact, and the human-led strategy had won the day. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. Humans survive. We adapt, we plan, and we act when it matters most. Lyra approached, her expression a mixture of pride and admiration. "You've done more than survive. You've led, taught, and inspired." "I never believed humans could achieve this," Daniel smiled. "We always find a way. That's what makes us strong." The survivors gathered around, exhausted but safe. They looked at Daniel and Lyra as heroes, a symbol of courage and ingenuity. Lyra turned to her people, her voice clear. "See now what humans can do. Strength isn't only in size. It's in mind, heart, and courage. Never underestimate them again." Daniel glanced at the horizon where the retreating fleet disappeared. The battle was over, but the galaxy remained full of dangers. Yet he felt no fear, only determination. Humans had survived against odds no one expected, and they would continue to do so. As night fell, Daniel and Lyra stood atop the fortress once more, looking at the stars. The twin moons reflected in their eyes, and the survivors below rested peacefully. Lyra spoke softly. "I once thought humans were weak. Now I know better. You've shown courage, intelligence, and strength beyond measure. Your people, your species, will survive anything." Daniel nodded. "We always do. And with allies like you, we can face even greater challenges." The stars above Lysera 7 seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the victory. Daniel felt a deep sense of pride, not just in himself but in his species. Humans were small, fragile in appearance, but inside they were capable of extraordinary feats. Lyra's hand rested briefly on his arm. "Whatever comes next," she said, "I will follow you. You've earned my trust, my respect, and my belief in humans." Daniel looked at her, a faint smile crossing his face. "Then together, we'll face whatever the universe throws at us. Humans survive, and with courage and strategy, we can overcome anything." The fortress stood as a beacon of hope on Lysera 7. It was more than a stronghold. It was proof that humans, even on alien worlds, could survive, adapt, and triumph. Daniel had not only saved lives, but he had also changed the perception of his species forever. Lyra, once a skeptic, now understood the truth. Humans were not weak. They were clever, courageous, and resilient. Their strength was a combination of mind, heart, and will, and the galaxy would soon learn to respect them. As the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the plateau, Daniel, Lyra, and the survivors looked toward the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and unknown challenges, but one thing was certain: humans would continue to rise, adapt, and survive wherever they went. The stars above whispered of future adventures, and Daniel felt ready for each one. Not as a fragile human, but as a symbol of courage and ingenuity. And Lyra, standing beside him, knew she had witnessed something remarkable: a human spirit capable of facing any threat, no matter how impossible it seemed. The fortress remained firm, the survivors safe, and the galaxy had taken notice. Daniel had proven that humans could overcome the impossible, inspire respect across species, and survive in the harshest conditions. And Lyra's voice echoed in the minds of her people, a reminder that strength came in many forms, and humans had it in abundance. For the first time, the Sarathi truly understood. Humans were not weak. They were formidable, clever, and courageous, and the universe had only just begun to see what they were capable of.